we do work hard, and this is who we are. We're a close-knit partnership. And I think what I want to say here is, this is what I'm made up of. When you might look at me, or when somebody looks at me, they may see me as a woman, or they may see me as a person of color, or they may see me as a woman of color. And that's sometimes we make judgment about what we see, and we make some quick assumptions about what that person might be like on the basis of what's visible. But actually, the truth is, we're all made up of multiple identities, and we cannot get away from that. We're not one homogenous group. We're all made up of different aspects of life, our education, our background, our upbringing, our personalities, our protected characteristics, our identities. They all make up something very special. And sometimes we forget about that when it comes to addressing diversity in cycling. And so one of the things I want to stress when we go through this is, that we're talking about intersectionality, which I'll explain what that is later. So I love to ride bicycles, and I wonder if you do too. And I would like to know, I'm just going to stop sharing because I'll keep on sharing and then keeping back so I can see what you're saying, is I'd like you to raise your hands. This is a raise function if you ride bikes. So can you raise your hand if you ride bikes? Oh, we've got plenty of hands coming up. I think just about everybody. Thank you. If you could just put your hand down so that we can still use the participation of hands. Thank you very much. And if you just use the chat function, what type of riding do you do? I'm really interested to know, what do you ride? What's your, what kind of things do you do? What kind of riding do you do? Is it enduro? Is it recreation? Yeah, just let me know what kind of riding. So, and we like to categorize ourselves when we are mounted, when we're cyclists as well. I remember somebody asking me, what kind of rider are you? And I didn't really know how to answer that, because this person was trying to categorize me into one box, but actually I ride, like many of you, like Helen, road, gravel, urban cycling, MTB, school runs, Kim Wills saying road and off-road riding for leisure. Fantastic. Gosh, I like the one that rides mostly downhill, but you'll have to get uphill as well. That's yeah, cool. And hybrid bike, road, off and road biking. Fantastic. What a real mix of people we've got on the call today. And I'd also like to know, where do you ride? Where are we all from? Where do you ride? Where do you ride? And oh, I should have said, Kim, that's a good point. A lot of people use cycling for their main form of transport as well. So Lara, East Lothian, Paris, wow, we've got something from Paris, Glasgow, West Yorkshire, Bristol, York, London. Wow, we've got people riding all over the UK and beyond. So that is absolutely wonderful. Well, that is great. So we're going to go back to my my slides here. And thank you for sharing that with me. And what I mentioned to you before we, when I just started the conversation, was this notion of intersectionality. And, the fact that we do tend to think of ourselves as homogenous groups, especially when we're trying to discuss diversity and inclusion. But intersectionality is a framework for understanding how aspects of a person's social and political identities combine to create different modes of discrimination and privilege. So as a person of colour, I experience racism and barriers because of racism in society. As a woman of colour, I also experience discrimination based on my gender. But if you combine these two together, then it's going to be something completely different, because as a woman of colour, I am going to experience many different barriers from men and from white people. So for me, it is important, and for everybody else, it's important that we actually think about how this all interconnects with one another, and how that impacts on our personal life chances and experiences within society. So this is going to be my focus for my presentation today, because you know what we have to make sure that no one is left behind. That is the ultimate goal, that no one is left behind. And when we have conversations around diversity and minority ethnic communities, we need to recognise, where are the women? That's what they say in Glasgow, where are the women in that minority ethnic community? So I hope you can tell from my accent, I'm from Glasgow. That's my hometown. So yes, intersectionality. And what I wanted to go on to say is my topic, and the title for this talk is "You Can't Be What You Can't See." Now, this title has been going out. This statement has been used quite a lot at the moment. Some people agree with it. Some people don't agree with it, because it makes the assumption that if you're not, that if you're not in the space, then you don't exist. So, you know, let's explore that in today's session. To some point, you may agree with that. Some of you might not agree with that. So let's explore that in a bit more detail today. And, you know, I think what I want to share with you about, you know, that statement, you can't be what you can't see, is my own personal story. And, you know, when I didn't start riding bikes until I was in my 20s. I wasn't given a bike when I was a young girl, but my brother was given a bike. And he said basically cycling wasn't for me. I was told as a young girl that I wasn't to take risks. Maybe biking was too technical for me. I don't know. Maybe that's what my father thought at the time. Yeah, I didn't see it as something that was for me. We didn't have it in school. I didn't know people around me that cycled. My mother and father came from Pakistan in the 60s. So their experience of sport in the UK, well, was nothing, was zero really. So, you know, for me, I didn't really have those influences around me. I didn't have people telling me that this sport is actually amazing, because cycling can be so brilliant for your mental health. It can be so brilliant for actually just building your resilience. I didn't know any of this when I was a youngster. And so I didn't cycle. I was very lucky because my husband today of 25 years told me that if I didn't go for a bike ride with him on a date, then then that would have been the end of it. So I was kind of forced to go out on a ride, and maybe I kind of didn't really enjoy it to start with, but I absolutely, you know, started to get more and more passionate about it. And then when I became more independent and knew, you know, how to take myself out and ride safely and know what I was doing, then I absolutely, you know, feel that I couldn't live without it now. But, you know, there was a lack of diversity in cycling. Where were the role models for me in cycling? Did I see anybody that looked like me? And I didn't. So why would I see that? All I can remember from the early days was Tour de France, and that didn't even have women in that space. It was also people of colour. So there is a lack of diversity. What I would like to say is that there is a problem, and there is a lack of diversity in cycling. And, you know, so we need to recognise, well, what's going on? What's the problem? You know, I've heard so many excuses. It's about the communities. The communities aren't interested. They're hard to reach. You know, or women are culturally shouldn't be going. You know, their families will be telling them not to go out. You know, it's not the right thing to do, because, you know, in somebody's culture that this may not be not be a you know, a thing to do because it's something for children, it's not something for adults. So there's a lot of assumptions going on out there about why there is that lack of diversity, and there is a problem. So we need to try and capture what is that fundamental problem. So let's look at some stats, and what do we know about the people of colour and cycling. So what we're going to do is we've got a poll, and I'm going to stop sharing my slides. And Tamsin, are you going to do the poll? Is that correct?
I am. Yes, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so let's go with poll. We've got, how many questions have we got? We've got 4 or 5?
We've got 4 questions.
4 questions, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one question, and then we'll do an answer to that. We'll look at what the results are, and then we'll have a wee bit of a chat about it. Okay, so poll number 1. So what is the percentage of BAME people, and I say BAME, which means Black and minority ethnic people who cycle? Is it 25%, 35%, 42%, or 55%? Okay. Okay, we've got a few more coming in. We can see where the poll is closed. If we want to share the results, Tamsin. So we have 25% is the one that's been answered the most, but it is actually 35% from statistics from British Cycling. So 1 in 3 cycle, but if you compare that to white people, 40 I've got the statistics. It's 41% of people from white people actually are cycle. So there's less people from Black and minority ethnic communities who cycle within the UK. Can we take poll number 2, please? What is the number of Black and minority ethnic people visiting forest parks in England? Is it less than 3%, less than 5%, less than 15%, less than 1%, less than 10%? Okay, coming in thick and fast, quite a mixed, looks like quite a mixed response. Sharing the results. So the one that came out highest was less than 5%. The answer to this, quite worryingly, is less than 1%. So 1% is significantly low, given the fact that yes, we may be cycling more, but are we actually cycling in the outdoors in our forests and enjoying that outdoor recreation space? So it is a significantly low number, and Forest England are very, very aware of that. Sorry, I should have said yes in the UK rather than in, worldwide. Sorry about that, Dulce. Okay, number 3. Which group is the least active population in the UK? Is it males over age 70 to 80? Or is it female 35 to 45? Is it female 13 to 15? Male 50 to 60, or female 16 to 18? Okay, let's see what the answers are, nearly coming in thick and fast. So the answer to that, most of you said female 35 to 45, but actually the answer that 2 of you got right, I wonder who that was. You may give them a clap. And it's actually female 13 to 15. And the incredible thing about this is that even men at the age of 80 are participating in outdoor recreation and cycling more than girls between the ages of 13 and 15. Now that is a horrific statistic, don't you think? It's because what is happening at that age because girls are dropping out, are twice as likely to drop out compared to boys in cycling and outdoor recreation. So, and why is that? Because they're experiencing a number of barriers at that age. They have barriers in terms of their body image, feeling uncomfortable about who they are, lacking confidence. There's also research that shows that young girls feel that they, if they're not really good at something, that they won't carry on and do it, or there may be a fear of actually doing something that is a little bit different. And Nathan and Ruben actually see a really good point there. We see girls dropping out locally at a pump track, so sad, very much about confidence, peer pressure, lack of role models, etc. Absolutely, it is. It's a real worry and it's a real concern to see that. But that's why we really need to capture girls at an early age, so that they can actually have a choice when they're older and see that actually cycling is such a beneficial sport for them. So it's capturing them at that right age to help them. And absolutely, Kim, fear of spaces inhabited by badly behaved men as well. Absolutely. And, you know, even when we think about pump tracks, I have seen groups of boys that we will be on their bikes, but the girls will be at the side, you know, yeah, waiting, chatting, and hanging out. So what's going on there? Obviously, is cycling not for them? So leave that thought with you. And the last poll: what is the predicted Black and minority ethnic UK population in 2050? What is the predicted number? Okay, almost coming in. Oh, great. We've got the answer is correct for the majority of you. It's 30%, 29% specifically. And so at the moment, we in the UK, the Black and minority ethnic population is 14%, and it is increasing, and it's increasing rapidly. So we do need to recognise our diversity, and we need to be prepared. So we need to be doing this work now rather than waiting for 2050 and realising that 1 in 3 people are just not, you know, in the UK population are potentially excluded. So thank you very much, Tamsin. We'll close the polls now. We'll go back. Thank you for your participation in that, everyone. It's always good just to get us thinking about some of the stats around some of this stuff. Okay, so back to so we've looked at the stats. So why are women of colour invisible? Now, tell me, what did you think? I can't see the chat, unfortunately, but just have a think about, what did those stats tell you? They were the best stats that I could potentially get out there. What was missing from that? What was missing? I wonder if I can see the chat, actually. I don't think I can. What was missing from that is the women of colour. Where were the statistics around the women of colour? So women make up over half of the population of England and Wales. So I know this is specifically to England and Wales, but at the last census, 13.9%, but that is 3.9 million of these women were from a Black, Asian and minority ethnic background. So there is, even in the statistics and in the national context, it's difficult even trying to gather data about women of colour, because we look at everything in such a homogenous way. So what ends up happening, the women of colour become invisible. I become invisible, and it's not a nice feeling to know that that you're not part of the space. So let's move on. So yes, let's sort of think about that in a bit more detail, and let's think about the why. And, you know, history plays a significant part in where we are today, because history tells us a lot about our communities, who's in that space, who isn't in that space. And even the word history, we know that there's been a lot of discussion around history versus her story, because history, what do we know? Who do we know are our role models? Who do we know that cycles from the past? Our images, our stories are all male, and you know, history is something that then does it hide a particular group because it only tells one story? So history in cycling has been predominantly male, and you know, but the narrative needs to change, because we need to look at where do women fit within that, and not just women, where do people of color fit into that, and then we then go into that double whammy, where do women of color fit into that? So we do need to rewrite that narrative, because our history doesn't really tell us a lot about the women of colour in cycling. So I'm just going to stop sharing that for a minute, and I'm going to come back to the chat. And I would like you to tell me, what year can you think, going back in time, that you are aware of women cycling? So what year would you go back that you know personally, you from your own knowledge, what would you say is the time that women would go back and cycle, and that would participate in cycling? Let's get some thoughts from you. I'll share mine soon. 1925, Bumi, okay. So you've got some stories from 1925, from 1940, the early 1900s as a mode of transport, but 1950s for racing, Helen. Thank you. Late 1800s, wow, wow. And Sharon says, I can only remember myself, not even professionals. And 1950s, we've got Belgium, early 1900s, fab. Okay, so now tell me, let's put into that sentence, the women of colour. What year can you go back and think about a woman of colour in cycling? There we go. We've got 2000s, and then we've got like a little sad face. Sadly, only recently seen images. 2010 from Melanie and Tamsin. It's quite stark, isn't it, when you think about the difference? I can't think of many women of colour in cycling. Do you know, when I was doing my research for this, it's hard enough trying to find women and stories from the past, but actually finding women of colour, I found two stories. That was it. 2 stories in our whole world telling us about stories about women of colour. So we have a long way to go. We're coming from a traditional space where women of colour haven't existed. And there we go, Helen Bridgman saying, aware only recently, sad to say, but some awesome women of colour out there now. And yes, we're going to talk about that, because there are some amazing women, because voices are starting to speak up that we've never heard before. Great stuff. So yes, I mean, for me as well, when I think back about my timescales, I will remember women cycling from the suffragette movement and how they used bicycles as a freedom tool to get out there and get their message out there. But for women of colour, honestly, I couldn't even think back to 2 years ago. Now I know loads and loads of them, because they're all starting to come to the forefront and into the, not even into the mainstream, but they're actually there with a voice. And you know, it's been great to see some of the work, like the Women of Colour of Cycling group, out there doing some incredible groundbreaking trailblazing work. So there is a movement which we can't ignore. Okay, right. So let's go back to my slides. And so we've talked about this, and these women are incredible. I've got to tell you, these women are incredible because they are. This is a story I picked up from somebody who was doing a dissertation in the sort of the kind of late the mid 1950s. McWhirter, the name was, and they had found this story about these five black women that had cycled from New York to Washington in 1928. Hurrah! 1928, isn't so? You know, 19, and they went on this 3-day trip. You can imagine, you know, you go out with your friends and you're like getting excited. You're going to do this journey, and they did this 250-mile trip. With day one it was 110 days. Day two was 40 miles. Day three was 100 miles. So, you know, and look at them. They look proud. They look strong. They look confident. But when we think about women of that time in the USA, what images do we conjure up? What are the stereotypes? The stereotypes are always very, very different. We don't see that confidence. We don't see that empowerment. And so I just love this picture. It really just really inspires me to know that actually those women were out there. We just didn't know that they existed. Okay, so let's move on. So what damage does this do if we are invisible? And if we think about, you know, let's kind of go through this in 3 steps. And if you're invisible, what does that mean? You know, we know cycling as a sport has been traditionally male. And yes, women are starting to break that mold, but it's then it becomes a very elitist, doesn't it? It becomes exclusive to a particular group. And what then ends up happening in that group is that you have this thing that you call groupthink. And groupthink is about people like themselves or people that are like each other will think like each other. That's very fact. If you think about your trusted people around you, they're more very likely to be like yourself. And so sometimes we don't know what other diverse voices are like. And that sometimes groupthink can be very dangerous because it means that it doesn't allow other voices to come into that. So, you know, so what's happening here is that it's, sorry about the spelling, the extra words there, but the cognitive effects of bias. You know, so if you are having this groupthink within this elitist circle, then think about how bias can play into that. And very much our unconscious bias, because our unconscious bias can kick in when decisions are being made. And we don't even know it because the bias comes from what is around us. We are familiar with what we know, but what we're not familiar with, we may see as unsafe, uncomfortable. So we need to think about, you know, the fact that bias can kick into decision making, and therefore it reinforces that exclusion of other groups. So, you know, so what can that potentially lead to? It can lead to negative stereotypes because you only think of women of colour, you know, from what you know from media, from what you read in the papers, and so you might have this very narrow view of what people of colour are like, and we know that women of colour have a hard time in the media. And women that are confident, that speak out, like Diane Abbott, one of the MPs, has had a horrendous time in terms of being able to speak up, and has been shot down because of her opinions or views, and has been, you know, tarred with this, has been defined as bossy, you know, over the top. And all she is doing is she's being a confident, strong woman. And the lack of creates a lack of representation within that circle, as well as a lack of role models. And then what does that lead to? What does that lead to? It leads to limited choices, doesn't it? And it doesn't create any opportunities for people. And the most saddest thing about all of this is people then are isolated because they're excluded. So this is how the system works, to the point at which, look at the impact that has on somebody. The impact, if you have limited choice, lack of opportunity, and isolation, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? What's that going to feel like in terms of your confidence, your ability to participate in public life, in cycling, in different spaces? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard having to sort of fight against this. So how can we reduce the harmful effects of visibility? We can rewrite the narrative. Don't you think? We can do that, and this is the time to do it. And I just want to thank Tamsin and her team for actually hosting this whole festival, for actually letting us speak up and people hear our voices, and that people can go away and actually take action around this, because we're all responsible. If we stay silent, then nothing will change. And what we can do is we can create inclusive spaces, and we can reach out and learn from other lived experiences. If we don't have people like ourselves, how can we reach out to others so that we can find out about what their barriers are? What opportunities can we create? What could we do differently to invite them into our circle? And so it is about building diverse communities. But in terms of reflecting for yourself, challenge the way you think and challenge the way others think. And that's about calling it out and not accepting that a certain way of doing things is just the normal way of doing things. We have to break the mold. We have to challenge the norms in order for us to create inclusivity for all. So it is about offering a safe space. And when I talk about safe spaces, some people criticize, well, why do we have these only women-only spaces or women of color-only spaces? Because at this stage, it's critical, because they need a place where they can be open, they can feel secure, they feel comfortable. But the most important thing is a sense of belonging. Don't we want to belong somewhere? And if we can't belong in the spaces that already exist, then we have to create these women of colour spaces. And I've talked about the Women of Colour Cycling Group that have created that safe space, and other groups I'm aware of have created that safe space to allow women to actually to build their confidence through cycling and to take that back into their everyday life. And never stop questioning, because if we stop questioning, then we won't be able to change the way we do things. And so the 3 phases that I talked about earlier is about readdressing the balance, and it's about the systemic barriers that exist within society. And if you want to understand a little bit more about systemic inequality, I'll show you a book that I'm reading at the moment, which is, if you can see that, it's called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Yes, it's quite a controversial title, but it's a really good book if you want to learn and understand more about systemic barriers, and and structural barriers as well. And I'm just going to read a quote from here. Structures, she said, are made out of people. When we talk about structural racism, we are talking about the intensification of personal prejudice or groupthink. And we talked about groupthink earlier, and that is really what systemic and structural inequality is about. And that's why we are all responsible, in the sense that we have to take action. And also the personal barriers. We talked about the impact that there's exclusion can, what exclusion can do to a person. But we internalize our oppression as well. We may lack confidence. We may question how we value ourselves. We might not want to try out new things. We want to stay in spaces that are safe. So these all, we ourselves are impacted, and it's not about blaming ourselves. It's a system that's doing it, but it's making us feel that we're not as capable, or that we may not be able to succeed as much as other groups in society. So this is what I would like to propose to you. I would like to propose a new slogan to the one that was the title of this this session, because I do want to challenge that. Because if we can't see people in the space, it doesn't mean that we have to sit back. We can break the system, and you can be the change you want to see. So I want to propose to you, and I would love to get some of your chat in the chat box. What do you think about making this as the new slogan? You can be the change you want to see. Challenge the myth and break the stereotype that women of colour don't cycle. Okay, so let me get some thoughts from you on that. Now, can we have a raised hands if you agree with me? If you don't agree with me, don't raise your hand. Let's have a look. Yep, Lara, Ella, Rebecca, Lisa, thank you. Yeah, I think we've got quite a lot of people here. A few not got their hands up as well, so so that's okay. So I've got what's somebody saying here. I feel I can't vote because I'm white. Of course you can vote if you're. Of course you can. All of us can. We're all in this together. It's a collective. It's a collective. So please raise your hand, because if people that are privileged in the sense that they have privilege on the basis that they don't have that lived experience, they can also empower people to be part of society, and you can reach out to them. So it is important that all of us play this, work hard to get this together. And it's about being an ally. Thank you. Yes, it's about being an ally whenever and wherever. And I can, but I am very aware of my privilege. Thank you for sharing. Danny, you said you've got a 8-month-old baby, so you're having a difficult time to vote, so that's okay as well. So if you wanted to pop in any other thoughts on that, I would love to hear some of your chat. But I'm just going to finish my slides with you and recognize that time is moving on, and just get back to this. And what I was really just talking about there was this call to action. And yeah, so this is my final slide to you, and it's to all of us, whether you're white, whether you're a person of colour, whether you're a woman of colour. Cycling must represent the world we live in. It's a fact. We are multicultural. We are made up of multiple identities. So you can create the world you want to see, and educate yourself if you don't feel that you're comfortable having the conversations. You can empower others by reaching out and finding those diverse voices, and encourage, because people that are excluded in society, sometimes you just need to tell them they can. And if you tell them that, then they will actually realize their strengths, they'll realize their abilities, and it will really help them to succeed. And that, for me personally, if I didn't have that in life, that somebody was telling me that I'm good at what I do, I would always believe that I wasn't capable, because I have struggled with imposter syndrome as part of my upbringing as a young Pakistani girl, telling me, that I'm not capable, that I've got to be getting, I should be married, I shouldn't go to university, that I shouldn't take risks. So I'm living with that every single day. And also from in terms of, my race, I was called all sorts of things when I was at school. And so you're never going to forget that as you grow up in life. It will always be with you. And and it can really undermine your ability and how you view yourself, because you're always being judged differently. So it is about encouraging others and helping them see their strengths and what they what is brilliant about them. So it's about celebrating the diversity of all our communities. And I think I really want to finish off with saying, leave no one behind. Okay, and I would like to thank you everyone for listening. There might be some questions that you want to ask me, or any thoughts. What did you think about my new proposal? Did anything resonate with you? Let's hear what you have to say. Use the chat, but I think Tamsin, I'm going to pass over to you.
Hello again. Yes, thank you so much, Anita, for that presentation. That was actually so powerful for me personally. I feel like I've never heard this topic discussed so openly. And I think I've got a lot to go in, think about, you know, previously I think I've experienced maybe imposter syndrome, but like not in the way that you have, but as in I've been led to believe multiple times that this isn't an issue, and like people don't believe that this should be talked about. So I hope that anyone who's come here, they come away from this with a new perspective, or maybe if they've already reached the stage that I'm at now, yeah, that they've taken away something new. Okay, so we did have some pre-submitted questions for you, so we're just going to work through those first, and then afterwards, if you guys keep submitting your questions into the Q&A box, we'll make sure we get to those. So the first question was, I'd be interested in any reflections on cycling culture, media, and social media representations of cycling and cyclists, and what role these play in increasing diversity. So I think this person's asking, how much effect does media and representation in the media have on diversity in cycling from your perspective?
Yes, no, it plays a really significant part. But I think somebody put in a question around tokenism, that was Dulce Pedroso, and so we can just connect those two questions together. And you know, it's important, because we need to see our role models, we need to see diversity in cycling, but we need to make sure it's not done in a tokenistic way, that I'm only doing it to make us look good. Or it's got to be that if a brand or an organization reaches out to a person of color, then they have to do it in the context that they are committed to making a difference, and they genuinely want to see change. So my view on that is, yes, it could potentially be tokenistic, but you know, organizations need to come from a different angle. So it's not just about having images. Images are important because what we see influences what we think. But you know, the other side of it is that we have to start from somewhere. You know, we have to start from somewhere, in the sense that, yes, we may not have people in the space, and we, you know, I had a conversation with somebody recently about setting up an organisation in a very white middle class area, but they wanted to target people of colour. So I said, well, if we don't have people of colour, how can we represent them in our media? But I said, well, that's the thing. You need to go out and reach out to people. You have to find out where those different communities are, because they exist. And I think that is that notion of groupthink. When you have that groupthink, you tend to think that that's the only way the only perspective that we may have. So yes, you know, representation is really, really important, but we need to be very careful with how we do it. And people of colour will get tired being asked to be represented in the media, and so we need to also recognise and be sensitive to that. Because I spoke to a woman who's a 26-year-old yesterday, a woman of colour, is working in the outdoors, and she told me yesterday she's tired. She's tired because she is getting asked to do things, and I did say to her, "Are you getting paid for this as well?" You know, that's the other thing. What is she getting in return? Because again, that then questions that whole notion of tokenism. You need to be valued, and you need to be recognised for what you are doing.
No, absolutely. I can't agree with that more. And I know, yeah, a lot of people of color are being asked to take up these voluntary roles, and it's almost like, why can't, why isn't this an official role? Like, why are we not being paid for this? Why are we expected to represent ourselves for free? And that's something I think, if you're here and you're wondering what you can do as someone who's maybe not a person of color, I think, yeah, it's definitely something you can look at, is integrating this kind of issue and making sure we're investing in it for sure. Okay, we've got some Q&As in the Q&A box. I'm just going to work through those if that's okay. So the first question is, how do you feel about the fact that people like us are already in the community, but we're not represented? They said they'll be making a video highlighting this and they hope the brands take notes. Any thoughts on that?
I can't really. So what was the question? Sorry, what your
how do you feel about the fact that people, I'm assuming they mean people of color, are already in the community, but we're not represented? I guess that kind of ties into this question that we've just asked, actually, in terms of
I think it's
representation in the media. So I hope that question's been answered, but if it hasn't been answered in the way that's appropriate for you, then please feel free to submit another. The next question is, this person is actively trying to promote change in their community, but reaching out and connecting, especially with COVID, is a challenge in itself. Do you have any suggestions as to how to build this change?
Yes, so connecting with communities. Is that the question? Connecting with communities?
Yeah. How do you approach? I suppose a question here would be, how would you approach these communities in a way that seems authentic?
Yes, absolutely. So no, I mean, I'm having lots of conversations. I do a lot of training with brands and organizations, and we do tend to have that conversation. I think what we found from COVID is that we've started to see a lot of groups setting up around diversity in cycling. And it is important that, these voices are being heard, but also there needs to be collaboration and there needs to be connectivity, that the groups that are campaigning to get more people into cycling and who are working with the communities actually engage with brands and organizations so that they can influence what they're doing, but at the same time they can help support the brands with participation and increasing that participation as well. So it's the communities are out there, and we need to make sure that they are being we need to make sure that the communities are out there, but we need to make sure that there is that connection and that collaboration so that we can increase participation. But I found that when, for myself, what I've found that when, we talked about role models, and when you do start to see people like yourself, then your own voice speaks up and then wants to do more as well. So I feel that this is only going to grow, and the communities are going to get bigger in cycling, and the voice isn't going to go away. The voice is going to be there, but I think it's important that collaboration and connectivity is the key to all of this.
That's really useful. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, I'm just working through the rest of the questions. I think this is a really interesting question, actually, because this is something I've wondered before. So the term BAME, or BAME, is clubbing together all people of colour. Does there need to be a breakdown of the representation based on skin tone compared to the local population to be most effective?
That's a really good question. It's a really difficult topic right now because there is a bit of a movement right now to campaign against this term BAME. I think when people of colour, or like myself, I would never describe myself as a BAME person. I would only describe myself as a Scottish Asian with Pakistani heritage, or if those Glasgow people out there, I'd call myself a Weegie. It's that I have my own way of expressing who I want to be. So there is a movement to change that. But Black and minority ethnic community, again, with language is rapidly changing, and it changes as the more we break the system, and we can look at, well, actually, we're not just made up of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. It's a it's quite a rude, it's quite an unhelpful term, because it kind of just categorizes everybody into one group, whereas we need to find a way in which we can respect everybody's identities. And I think that goes back to my point about intersectionality, that we need to be able to respect people for who they are. And I know that the term women of colour, people of colour, I've only started using that in the last year. And so I don't know where we're going to go on this journey, but it's definitely changing, that's for sure.
No, that's really interesting, especially about, how language is always changing, evolving. Like I've seen organizations recently going through multiple name changes, just trying to find the one that fits. And I guess that's okay. Like it comes back to listening to people and hearing what they have to say and doing something about it. Okay, I think we just have one more question. I think this is actually a really, really nice one to finish on. So this person says, I work with young people, encouraging them to cycle. What experiences, advice, or words would you have liked to hear or have heard when you were a young woman of colour that might have encouraged you to start cycling sooner?
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. I'd love to hear if on the chat, actually, if you've got any words of advice that you would want to give to a young woman of colour. It'd be great to actually do this together. But for me, the words that I would have liked to heard is that cycling gives you freedom. Cycling empowers you. Cycling gives you confidence. Cycling can help you be resilient. And if I heard all these things about what cycling can do for me, then I think it would be a sport that I would very much love to be in. So for any young girls out there that want to participate in cycling, just go for it, find out what it's about, and create your own clubs. Get yourself together. And there's more of us riding bikes during COVID, and from minority ethnic communities. So get out there, create your clubs, and empower yourselves.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I needed to hear that, actually. Maybe not just young girls, but I think I definitely needed to hear that. I think there has been a response in the chat.
Yeah, so JW, I don't know what JW stands for, but JW says, if you can find a buddy or ally, maybe a friend or through an organisation, so you don't have to go alone. Absolutely. Create your own spaces. That's what's important here. And really just enjoy the fun of cycling, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It gives us all these wonderful things, but it's the fun element that keeps us alive and keeps cycling what it is.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That was a really lovely way to finish this session, I think. Thank you so much, Anila. I'm sure everyone will agree with me that they've all learned a lot here today. But yes, you're welcome to stay as I close the session, or you're welcome to leave if you'd like. Just for anyone who's still here with us, that's the end of it. That is the festival. The festival has now finished. And thank you so much for coming. If you came to multiple sessions, that is great. If you didn't, they will be uploaded to YouTube soon. So we will be emailing out those links very shortly with captions and transcriptions. It would also really help us if you could complete our post-event survey. We do have a chance to win one of 6 £50 Love to Shop vouchers. I think, we'd love it if you could complete this, because this will help us in our future work. But that's it. Thank you very much for coming again. And thank you to our sponsors, Cycling Scotland, Sustrans and Edinburgh Bike Co-op. We've had a really great time and we hope you have too. See you soon.